She walked into the mall with nothing but a smile and a shopping bag in hand. But moments later, everything changed. Security didn't see her as a customer. They saw her as a problem. Pulled aside, judged by nothing more than the color of her skin, her dignity was stripped away in front of strangers. What they didn't realize was that the cameras were watching too. And what those cameras captured would turn her quiet pain into a story the world could no longer ignore. Her name was Zuri, a young woman who carried herself with quiet confidence and warmth. She had worked all week at her part-time job, saving up for something as simple as a new pair of shoes. For her, the mall wasn't just a place to shop. It was a space of escape, a chance to feel like she belonged among the bright storefronts, the smell of fresh pretzels, and the hum of weekend laughter. That Saturday afternoon, sunlight spilled through the glass ceiling as families bustled in and out, children tugging at parents' hands, music floating from the stores. Zuri blended in like anyone else, dressed neatly in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back as she scanned the displays with a thoughtful eye. There was nothing unusual about her presence, nothing to suggest that her visit would be different from anyone else's. She smiled at a child passing by, paused at a window showcasing fall fashion, and adjusted the strap of her bag. In that moment, she was just another face in the crowd. Ordinary, unremarkable, invisible in the best way. But beneath the calm rhythm of her afternoon, something waited. The kind of moment that doesn't announce itself until it's too late. And as Zuri stepped deeper into the mall, unaware of the eyes that had begun to follow her, the ordinary would soon shatter. At first, Zuri barely noticed the shift. A quiet glance from across the hallway, a subtle turn of a head when she walked by. She had grown used to the stares, the way people sometimes sized her up before looking away. But this felt different, lingering, deliberate. As she moved from one store to the next, she caught sight of a mall security guard standing near the escalator, eyes fixed on her. She brushed it off. After all, security was everywhere, always watching. But then she saw another one, stationed by the food court, speaking into his radio as he glanced in her direction. A tight knot formed in her stomach. Still, Zuri pushed forward. She picked up a blouse from a rack, traced the fabric between her fingers, then set it back down. That's when she felt it. The presence of someone directly behind her. Turning, she found the same guard from earlier, towering over her, his expression unreadable. "Can I help you?" she asked softly, though her voice carried more confusion than confidence. He didn't respond. Instead, he gestured for her to follow, his hand brushing the radio clipped to his vest. Shoppers slowed their pace, some pretending not to notice while others openly stared. Heat rose in Zuri's cheeks as she realized all eyes were falling on her. Walking beside him, she asked again, "Is there a problem?" But the only answer was silence. The sound of her footsteps against the polished floor echoed louder than the chatter of the mall. It was the kind of silence that said everything. That she didn't belong, that her very presence was suspicious. By the time they reached the open atrium, 2 more guards had joined. They stood in a half circle, blocking her from the path ahead. The crowd had grown now, onlookers whispering, some raising their phones, recording. Zuri's heart pounded as the guards closed in. They accused her, not with words she could fight, but with stares sharp enough to pierce. Shoplifting, loitering, causing suspicion. None of it spoken aloud, but written across their faces. And with each unspoken accusation, her dignity crumbled a little more. The mall, once a place of escape, had become a stage. Zuri was the unwilling performer, cornered under harsh lights, with an audience that didn't know her but thought they understood the story unfolding. But the truth was about to break open. Because while Zuri stood frozen in humiliation, the phones recording her every movement were capturing more than just a girl surrounded by guards. They were capturing the injustice itself, documenting the reality that couldn't be denied once seen. The circle around Zuri tightened until there was barely room to breathe. The guards demanded her bag, motioning with authority, their voices low but sharp. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the scandal that they had already decided was true. Zuri's hands trembled as she held out the small tote she carried. Inside were nothing more than her wallet, a water bottle, and a book she had been reading during the bus ride. No stolen items, no evidence of a crime. Just the everyday belongings of an ordinary young woman. One of the guards rummaged through it anyway, each movement deliberate, as if to prolong her humiliation. When he found nothing, his frustration only grew. Another guard spoke into his radio, muttering about probable cause, as if searching for a reason to justify what was already unjustifiable. The onlookers whispered louder now. Some shook their heads, others recorded every second, their cameras catching the moment her innocence was laid bare. Zuri's chest tightened as she realized this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every judgment, every assumption, every time someone had been made to feel less than human because of the color of their skin. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she stood tall, refusing to let them see her break. The guard finally stepped back, empty-handed, but his silence spoke volumes. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge the mistake. Instead, he stared at her with the same suspicion, as though her very existence in that mall required justification. And then it happened. From behind the phones, a voice rang out, clear, strong, and filled with outrage. "She didn't steal anything. We saw everything. You're targeting her for no reason." The crowd stirred, emboldened. One recording was uploaded, then another. And within minutes, the story that began as her quiet humiliation had exploded into something far bigger. In that moment, Zuri was no longer just a target. She had become the center of a truth that could not be silenced. Zuri left the mall that day without buying anything, her steps heavy, her spirit bruised. But what had been meant to shame her had turned into something else entirely. The video spread quickly, shared, reposted, dissected. Strangers who had never met her now saw her pain, and more importantly, they saw the truth. Comments flooded the clips. Anger, empathy, disbelief. This could have been me. This happens every day. When will it end? Her humiliation was no longer silent. It had become a conversation too loud to ignore. For Zuri, the memories would linger. The piercing stares, the cold silence, the moment she was treated as less than human. But she also knew she had not stood there alone. The cameras had captured what words often failed to prove. The world had watched as dignity was stripped away, and in doing so, it forced a question to the surface. Because this wasn't just Zuri's story. It was the story of countless others whose experiences never made it to the spotlight, whose voices were silenced before they could be heard. The mall incident became a symbol, a reminder of how far society still had to go, and of how quickly injustice can unfold in ordinary places. Zuri may have walked away quietly, but the world did not. And the question remains, how many more will have to endure the same before change finally takes root?